For 2025, I've decided that the final segment of UFC Fight Week will always be the prop drop. Now, from last year, you guys will remember I used to do the 3 best prop and long shot bets for you guys. And I gotta say, gotta be completely honest, it was not the greatest look for you, boy. It was a horrible run in 2024. So for 2025, I thought I'd switch it up just a tad to be a little bit more informative in terms of what I like for props. Hence, the birth of the prop drop. Now, you guys remember from my older prop shows that I used to do back in the day, I would cover the entire card and give you guys my favorite props for each matchup. But so I think I'm going to do a little bit of a mixture of that as well as the 3 best prop bets. So I'll briefly go over every single matchup on the card, but specifically talking about each prop that I like. And then at the end of the show, I'll give you guys my top 3 props as well as a free long shot as well, or the long shot that I like the most that I feel like you guys should be tailing on. But yeah, this should be somewhat of a pretty brief segment, maybe 8 to 10 minutes long. And it gives me a little bit more of an opportunity to touch on other props that I might like that the 3 best prop bet segment did not give me an opportunity to do so. So I'm sure you guys will enjoy this a little bit more, get my, my mindset on all of these fights rather than only 3 of the fights. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy that. So without further ado, well, I quickly just want to plug once again the fact that I'm unable to have access to my studio, hence no actual visuals for this podcast or any of the content that I did this week besides the full card breakdown I did on Monday, but I will be back to normal next week. With that said, I might be slightly delayed with the full card breakdown for UFC 311, and that will probably drop on Tuesday rather than Monday, so I'm just giving you guys the heads up in regards to that right now. All right, without further ado, let's get right into this thing. The first fight up was Nurullo Aliev versus Joe Selecki. The props that stand out to me the most are probably the Aliev by decision, but it's a little bit chalky at minus 210. And more often than not, he goes out there and grinds his opponents out. I believe all except 2 of his wins have come by decision, and I think that rings true this weekend. If Selecki is able to have any success, and I think it comes in this form of a submission, and seeing that prop all the way up at plus 1200 might not be a bad way to hedge any action that you have on Aliev, but I'd be very surprised if Aliev gets stuck in any of those spots. But I think we see him grind it out, and that chalky prop of minus 210 comes through. Fatima Klein going up against Victoria Dudikova up next, and the spot that I'm liking the most, although it's not something that she is very, we see sprinkled out throughout her record, I do think that Klein wins this fight by submission, and at plus 350, I think it's worth a little bit of a shot. I think primarily this fight will take place in the grappling realm, and I think we'll see Dudikova slip up and make a few mistakes, which will allow Klein to hop on the back and eventually sink in a rear naked choke. At plus 350, I'm liking my odds there, and I don't mind that as one of the props to target in this fight. Bruno Lopez going up against Magomed Gadzhiesulev. I do believe this fight ends up going to the scorecards, but I think that Lopez is the one that ends up landing the more significant strikes, and at least the more pleasing ones in the judges' eyes, which is why I think at plus 700, Bruno Lopez to win by decision is not a bad way to take a shot. Next up, Ernesta Karascate against Nicole Cagliari. Not too many hyped props in this matchup. The only one that I'm kind of feeling here is Karascate by decision at plus 100. I do believe we'll see her utilize a high volume and a high output style, which will cause Cagliari a lot of problems. It won't put Cagliari away, which is why I like the decision prop here at plus 100. Next up, Jacoby Smith against Preston Parsons. I think this fight ends up hitting the scorecard, so the over 2.5 at plus money is not a bad way to go about this fight, but even targeting specific decision props for either side with Jacoby Smith by decision at plus 210 or Preston Parsons by decision at plus 800, I think one of those ends up cashing, but again, if you want to play it safe, you can go with the over 2.5 at plus 110. Next up, I am pretty much against most people here in terms of my prediction with Trey Ogden pulling off the upset against Thiago Moises. And I think if Ogden wins, it likely comes by decision with him finding spots to grind Moises out and keep him on the defensive. I think Moises will have the striking advantage here. And if he's able to successfully keep this fight upright, I could see him piecing up Ogden and actually not finding a knockout, especially should this fight get into deeper water where we've seen Ogden have some, sketchy body language in the past. So Moises by knockout at plus 900 is a little bit of a dark horse spot in this matchup, but the prop that I think that ends up hitting is going to be Trey Ogden by decision at plus 250. Our next up, Marco Tulio Silva going up against Ihor Potieria. I expect this one to be chaotic from jump, although I do believe it still ends up reaching the second round. So at minus 190, it might be worth a little bit of a consideration for the fight to start round 2. But specific props here for either guy. Marco Tulio by submission plus 600. I could see him taking a grapple heavy approach and eventually sinking in an arm triangle choke or a rear naked choke. And especially with Potieria missing weight and looking horrible on the scales, I could see that coming back to bite him in the ass, allowing Tulio to eventually pull over or take over late and wrap up that submission. On the flip side, Potieria will be likely looking to take off Marco Tulio's head, and for him to win by knockout at plus 1,000 is not a bad way to hedge if you find yourself overexposed on Tulio. Next up, Jose Johnson against Felipe Bunes. Although Johnson did miss weight on the scales this morning, I don't think it looked too bad, and I think we'll still see him be able to go out there and perform to the best of his abilities. I think we'll see him actually stick to the style that has made him so successful, and that's utilizing high volume and high output from range. And I think for him to win this fight on the scorecards at plus 185 is not a bad way to look at this fight. On the flip side, the one thing that does have me a little bit hesitant about Johnson is his tall man defense at times, and he has been put away. So Bunes to win by knockout at plus 1,100 is not a bad way to go about it, especially considering how aggressive he can be at times. And if he's able to catch Johnson with a few good shots, that knockout prop could actually pay dividends here. But I'm going to lean with Johnson by decision as my favorite prop in this matchup. Next up, we got Roman Kopylov going up against Chris Curtis, a fight that I expect to actually finish by knockout. I think that prop sat around plus 150 if I'm not mistaken, but either guy to win by knockout straight up here, Kopylov by knockout plus 350 or Curtis by knockout plus 490. But the spot that I'm feeling quite sly about here is going to be the round 3 KO prop from Chris Curtis at plus 2,200. We know Kopylov has a very sketchy gas tank, and that could come to haunt him here against a veteran like Curtis, who is usually difficult to put away. And if Kopylov's unable to get off on his wrestling, which I think he's going to struggle to do so here against Curtis, and he can't find anywhere to stay safe late and on in this matchup, I think Curtis can start exchanging in the pocket, landing his big strikes, and possibly putting Kopylov away. So that round 3 KO prop definitely has some legs here. Next up, Punahele Soriano going up against Uroš Medic. I think this fight goes one of two ways. Either Soriano goes out there and wins this fight by decision at plus 490, or Medic continues his finishing ways just as he's finished all of his professional matchups. And I think it happens early with Medic round 1 KO coming in at plus 390. I think that's better than taking the chalk on his line, because I believe after round 1 his finishing equity starts to fall off. But I do think that Soriano will be able to keep this fight in the grappling round for the most part, and that will allow him to grind this fight out similar to what he did against Miguel Baeza last time around. So Soriano by decision plus 490. Christian Rodriguez going up against Austin Bashi. I know a lot of people are high on Bashi here, but I do like Rodriguez, and I think his ability to scramble and get out of too many bad spots against Bashi will allow him to control this fight in the striking realm, and I don't think he'll have enough to muster up a big finish over Bashi, which is why I think this ends up hitting the scorecards and taking Rodriguez to win by decision at plus 470. Not too shabby, but although his straight up money line here around plus 200 is still safe enough. But if you want to get a little greedy, I think the decision prop is the way he ends up winning this matchup. Next up, Cesar Almeida going up against Abdul Razak Al Hassan, similar to a previous fight that I talked about with Puna and Medic. I think Almeida actually wins this fight on the scorecards with a tepid or a patient striking approach, really touching up Al Hassan and landing the better strikes. Or on the flip side, we see classic Al Hassan come through, get that round 1 knockout, and that's currently sitting at plus 850, which I think is a ridiculous line considering that's usually how he ends up winning his matchups. So you can go with one of the two, and I think you'll come out with some profit here, but I am going to lean with Almeida by decision as my favorite prop there. Co-main event, Santiago Ponzinibbio going up against Carlston Harris. Another fight where I think no matter who wins, is probably going to come by knockout. You can get Ponzinibbio by knockout at plus 210 or Harris to win by knockout at plus 500. Obviously, the under 2.5 has taken significant action over the last couple of days, going from about plus 120 to all the way about minus 155. I am going to lean with Ponzinibbio, though, by knockout at plus 210, as I think he is more likely to get the knockout here, as long as his speed speed and his durability holds up a little bit, he should be able to make Harris pay for the reckless striking approach that he normally implements, and I think that will allow Ponzinibbio to find the knockout. And again, plus 210, sign me up. And that brings us to the main event. Amanda Ribas going up against Mackenzie Dern. Ribas was able to win a decision in a 3-round fight against Dern back in 2019. And I think she replicates that result this time around, even with 2 extra rounds. I think the durability of Dern will allow her to see the final bell here. So nothing too juicy here on the Ribas by decision at minus 105. If there is an opportunity for Ribas to really turn up the heat, if she bloodies the nose of Dern or something and is able to put together a barrage of strikes, she could potentially find a finish, and that KO prop currently sits at plus 750. So if you're feeling a little bit greedy and you're feeling a little bit risky here, that KO prop at plus 750 could bear some fruit, but I think the best one for this matchup is likely going to be Ribas by decision at minus 105. All right, let's quickly talk about the top 3 prop bets that I got here, as well as the long shot. The first one is going to be Jose Johnson by decision at plus 185. I already explained it earlier. Punahele Soriano by decision plus 490. Christian Rodriguez by decision plus 470. And the long shot with Chris Curtis, round 3 knockout plus 2200. There you guys go. Top 3 best prop bets, as well as the props that I like from every single matchup on the card. Let me know what you guys thought about this prop drop segment. I'm sure you guys enjoyed much more than just hearing about 3 matchups like I used to do last year. Leave some feedback in the comment section below. Otherwise, good luck on all your action this weekend, folks. And I will see you guys likely on Tuesday for the full card breakdown for UFC 311. See you guys then. Peace.